live from Trinidad and Tobago.
Welcome to Connections 50 Plus Wednesdays live show.
I am Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite.
And I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Connections 50 Plus Wednesdays live. I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph.
And I am Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite. We are the co-creators of Connections 50 Plus. Welcome also to the Caribbean viewers on Gael and all in Bookland.
So today we have with us a guest. Our topic we will be speaking on.
A familiar guest.
Right. So with our guest, we will be speaking on relationship transitions as 50 plus. And our guest, which is Dr. Allison Gibbons, and Dr. Gibbons is a family psychologist. She's also a therapist and a gerontologist. So we do have an expert, Terry-Ann, with us as we speak to you. Okay, so Terry-Ann, we were chatting. I mean, we have been in our lives, have been talking a lot about the transition from second stage into third, the second act, we say, into the third act, and also, you know, the changes we experience after, you know, we work so hard and we're looking forward and saying, yes, we can't wait, you know, to leave that job you may have been in and just relax. But guess what? Do we really relax? Is it that easy when you now move into that third act? What do you think?
Well, the thing about it, I don't know if it's so much relax, and we have the pro here to talk about it. What I would say is that we get caught up in the second act. And truth be told, and Dr. Gibbons would I think vouch for this. This is where we come into our essence and our being. We see the fruits of our labor, whether it's your children blossom into productive adults or not productive adults. They disappoint you, they please you. You have the career where you may have ascended to heights and, you know, been Miss or Mr. this, or you may have been, who are you? Does anyone remember you? Or you may have been in the middle. But after the second act, we really define ourselves. And we've talked, Jennifer, that one of the biggest changes that we have to deal with is the nature of our relationships. Because very often our work friends are our friends. And if you're a very involved parent, the parent network is your network. And for couples, very often they're very busy and they probably spend about 2 hours a day with each other, so they don't know each other. And when you when you leave the second act stage, you turn around, you probably trying to figure out who am I and who are you? Allison, is that a common situation?
Yeah. Yes, Terry-Ann. Hi, Jennifer and Terry-Ann, and all the listeners and viewers. That's an interesting point we can jump off on, the whole idea of we have these intimate relationships, let's talk about people who have been married and living together for all of these years, those who are doing the traditional stage development and progression thing. You know, you get married, you have jobs, you buy a house, you raise your children leave, and then you retire, you stop work, and you start thinking about, you know, what are we going to do? So when this couple first met, they got to know each other up to a point, and then they go off and everybody gets busy and they see each other like ships in the night sometimes, you know. Yeah. And they just get together in bed for 5 or 10 minutes and, you know, then they press on again the next morning and they're gone. So through all of these 20, 25 years, people are busy living life that way. And as you said, all of a sudden, the children are gone if they had children. And they thought they knew each other and things come up.
They did back then.
Yeah, they thought they did back then too, because people did not really go into depth about knowing one another. We didn't know that much about ourselves even.
Yeah.
So during these 20, 25, 30 years, people got to know themselves better. But they had no time to reveal that to each other because they were so busy passing like ships in the night. So all of a sudden they are facing each other and they don't know the other person. And your question was, who am I and who are you?
Yes.
And if people had liked each other through the years and continue to like each other as people, they may work on this who am I and who are you thing together and, make it to the end together. But those are the lucky people. That does not always happen, where they stop work, they may travel together and enjoy their grandchildren together and go to special interests. They go for walks together and, they go to the beach together and so on. Those are the lucky few who enjoy life that way. That's the ideal, but that's not how it happens for many people.
Allison,
yeah.
Those are the lucky people. Based on your experience, what percentage of couples would you say fall into this lucky group?
Believe it or not, unfortunately, it's a very small percentage, 10% if we're lucky, give or take. In fact, relationship research shows that there are 3 periods in marriage when divorce is most likely. And believe it or not, the first year of marriage is when it could fall apart. And then we hear about the 7-year itch when marriages can fall apart. But believe it or not, the other highest group is the 25-year. And how many times have it surprised you where some people who have been married 25, you say, you go, they what? They separated, they got divorced. They were married for 25 years, they were married for 30 years. But research shows it happens a lot. And even those who don't decide to separate stay together in misery, unfortunately, because...
I'm just about to ask that, Allison.
Yes.
It's just because you're tolerating each other because you are too busy. It could be because of financial situation.
All kinds of reasons, tradition, religion, where you're going after 25 years. You are ashamed to admit your marriage is unhappy. You don't know where to go, and finances play, a big role. In fact, you have one house, you probably just paid off the mortgage, where are you going? So people do stay together miserably so, and unfortunately that kind of stress and misery leads to a lot of physical illnesses.
Yeah.
So a lot of illnesses build up. Some people die immediately after retiring. And it's not just the physical illness, but the physical illness sometimes stems from that emotional stress and the resentment you hold inside to say, I have to stay here for the rest of my life. And people do, but they do so in real misery, unfortunately.
Are there people, is there any middle ground where, apart from the lucky 10%, and, I hope the other end is another 10%.
Believe it or not, it can be smaller than 10%. 10% sounds safe, but it's really such a small number. Every time, even though I know better, every time I think that I know people who got it made and everything is looking so well, then you get, blindsided by, oh my God, I can't believe, or they reveal privately to me, and you go, oh my God, what are you going to do? And yes, there is always hope. People can seek help. People can confront the situation and admit, okay, listen, we want to stay together, but we're not going to stay here miserably. Let's find someone to help us work on this. And get to know each other again and see whether, what we can work out, how we can get to like each other, if not 100%, but at least like something about each other again, find out where we can find common ground, and let's take it from there.
Friends and be friends, be good friends.
Right, but then if you were never friends, many people assume they were friends when they got married, not necessarily so. In fact, friendship holds a marriage together very well. A lot of people assume they were friends. You know, they met, they got married, or they lived together, or or they had sex first or after, and they assume they were friends. Not necessarily so. The dynamic of marriage sets in, and they never really establish an enjoyment of each other, which friends do. Good friends do. So people who are good friends then tend to have that going for them. People who are never friends are the ones who get up and go, "My God, who are you?" They didn't really get to know each other to know whether they even liked each other, and the whole saying is we were in love, but I'm not sure we were in like, we
Can I answer, Tim?
don't like each other. You get up one morning and you just realize you don't like this person.
Mhm.
Allison, is it possible, and Terry-Ann mentioned middle of the road, but is it possible reaching that stage, recognizing that you don't, it's difficult to live as a couple? Would I'm thinking whether, and I know couples who have been doing this, I'm not sure how successful they have been, but making an arrangement. For instance, you divide the house in like 2 apartments, and you live because of, again, financial situation and other type of situations, that you decide to live in share the same house, but actually you go your own ways.
Well, there are all kinds of different ways on the spectrum in terms of how people handle that. Couples who recognize that they really have nothing in common, and I'm not interested in working it out professionally so that they can really enjoy each other, find different ways to deal with it. Some just start traveling separately if they have money. Some people just take up and go spend 6 months by the adult children and grandchildren, catch their breath and come back. And that may be the man or the woman. Women tend to do that a lot. And they may even make that excuse and fool themselves that they're going to visit, but they stay 6 months. Sometimes they stay a year.
Oh, yes.
And breathe and come back. But there are other ways as well. People don't always lean into their creative side to say, let's divide the house and so on. Sometimes they just simply move into another bedroom and eat their meals different times, and watch different televisions, and so on. So they kind of continue passing each other like ships in the night, but strangers on the outside will never know that they're actually living together separately, without even officially dividing the house with separate kitchens or anything. They move in and out of the kitchen separately. They eat separately. They may even cook separately. Mm-hmm. They have separate bedrooms, but to the external world, they look like Mr. and Mrs., and their children may know, and close relatives may know something is different there. Sometimes people put it down to, they just get older and separate within the house.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that older people can't have intimate relationships and enjoy them. It's just they give up on the idea because it's challenging to start something new. It's challenging to go and have to find finances to live a separate life. And there are challenges to living independently and as an individual. We are created as human beings for intimate relationships. We just have to figure out how to enjoy them in these intimate relationships.
Allison,
go ahead, Terry-Ann. I'll just come in up.
You have just put such a different spin on that third bucket of ours, Jennifer. That social and community, because I am envisaging our entire cohort, and I put myself into it because at the end of the day, in my marriage, I am not the person that I was when I got married.
Nope.
And this is a household of professionals, successful professionals. And I tell my family straight, 11 months for you, 1 month for me, and I disappear for a month, and I disappear out of the country.
Yes.
Not to contact me, and I'm wondering whether I'm sneaking away. I ain't go for 6 months, but a whole month.
You are sneaking away. That is, it's not dire that you sneak away, but at least you can go out and catch your breath and feed your soul and come back. Which is necessary.
Going.
You go, so at least you may recoup enough energy to put back into the relationship until you're ready to go again. Some people don't have that creativity to lean into or somewhere to go and the finances with which to do it. So they are stuck in the same space, physical space, and they find other ways to do it by, if they have adult children, they may go visit, and depending on the nature of what they're running away from, may determine whether they stay a week or 12 months, or never come back. Some people simply never return, or they go from one child to the other, and just never return.
Is there, definitely there would be a difference in how men handle that situation as against how women will handle that situation?
More or less, we can always find gender differences because our emotional systems tend to be made up differently. I may get into the whole issue, for example, of sexual needs, which women tend to deny themselves. So by the time they get to be, they have been suppressing it for so long if things went sour when they were 40, that by the time they get to be 50 and 55, they just decide to lock it down and forget all about it. Men don't do that. No. And if they cannot get back on the same track, to enjoy each other, including sexually, men tend to go find, that outlet somewhere else. Sometimes it may lead to a totally other relationship. Sometimes they do it clandestinely, and sometimes they do it openly, and their wife just turns a blind eye to it. But it happens all the time, but men are getting older as well, and if they maintain a little physical health, then they have things like Viagra and so on to help them along, so they may be 70, 80 and still want to function sexually, and the wife may just turn her back and go, I'm not interested. So that's what happens as a result, and women need to get in touch with their sexuality and pay attention to that part of their relationship if they are in one. And if they know they don't want to be dealing with that, then they need to have a frank discussion about it as adults, and decide what they want to do about it, how to work it out, or whether they will officially agree that someone will turn a blind eye to it, or some people, when, like if we're talking about some women, and men do it as well, who leave the house and go somewhere else, and they may conduct, if it's a man, he may conduct his other relationship somewhere else, or a woman may choose to get out of the way and know that's what her husband is doing when she's not there for the 6 months or the 12 months, and she's not interested in fighting about it. For women, on the other hand, who still want to be sexually active, and if the man happens to be with a man who is not interested or not interested in her that way anymore, and may see her only as a mother to his children, and she too may decide, women are more apt to leave for that reason, if they want to be sexually active with someone else. But a few women do end up having affairs at that age with younger men. So it depends on who it is and how they are and what they feel comfortable doing, or how in touch they are with their own emotional needs, and whether they want to do something about it or pretend their emotional needs don't exist anymore.
Allison, as you're on that point, I always, I make the point with Jennifer, and I say that our cohort, our 50+ cohort, are really the tip of the arrow that give ourselves permission. First, we gave ourselves permission in the career world, or raise our children as we saw fit, and broke away from what mommy say or what whoever says, because we went away and we didn't live in the extended family. So we really charted our own course in the home, if we were a homemaker, or outside of home, wherever we were, whether we were professionals, administrative, wherever we were. And I am one, there's this old thing where I'm still looking for a couple that's married more than 40 years that I would say, yes, I want to be that couple. I'm still looking for them. I can't find them. I think women have made sacrifices that are beyond the beyond. But I am wondering if our cohorts, because we are accustomed or we have practice making decisions and causing things to happen, whether it is in the home, in the job, in church, or wherever you went and caused things to happen. Whether our cohort is going to go onto this third act stage in the state of denying their sexuality, denying their needs. Now, yes, the previous generation, my mother, her mother, you would have all these sufferers sitting down there and I am Mrs. this or Mrs. that, or whatever it is they're doing. But I wonder if our cohort generally is less prepared to be an acceptor. I don't want to say a sufferer, but an acceptor and denying their needs and not being more proactive about making sure they're happy.
Again, your cohort meaning, you know, professional decision makers.
Or homemakers who were in charge.
Right, but yeah, homemakers who were in charge of the home may think differently. One of the exposures that a professional group of women in your cohort would have is that exposure to other people all the time.
Yeah.
You know, other men in the workplace, they travel and they meet interesting people. So they are stimulated all the time. And their emotions are stimulated all the time. Excuse me. I just need some water.
We'd have all kinds of people asking us, Jennifer, what you all encouraging there and connect?
We're not right. It's not to encourage anything, but it's to be truthful about what happens among men and women and between men and women. So that women whose emotions have been stimulated all the time, and not necessarily that they were in a back room somewhere, you know, having sex with one of their co-workers, although that does happen, but that's not the norm. But the whole idea of getting up and dressing to go out and looking attractive, there is that stimulant, you know, all the time. The woman who has been at home all the time, she may have been professionally prepared in terms of her education, but whether by agreement or she may have chosen to stay home or she may have been asked to stay home and raise the kids, that she falls a little behind in terms of her personal emotional needs. She was tending to the children's and the husband's needs all the time and putting hers aside. She may less likely be the one to get up and say, I'm leaving, or I'm going to look for something better, for someone to treat me better and give way to her emotional needs. She may be more have been suppressing them, you know, for all of this time. And every now and then someone breaks out of that and shocks the whole family.
Yeah.
by saying, I'm done, I'm gone, you know, go to court and get her share and go make a life with it. And you do have, you know, few women, some women who will do that. Others may become the silent sufferers and continue to be that way. And when the children are gone and she has no life, then she's a type place, and not all women like that are going to leave the marriage. I mean, not advocating that people leave a marriage. We just, if I have to advocate for anything, it's for people to communicate before they get to this point, you know, and talk about what they're missing and what they can do together when, you know, they may retire around the same time, or one may be older and retire before the other, or more, one may just choose to leave the workplace earlier. But they need to communicate about their needs and not be shy about it as they may have been when they were 25, that now it's time to say, hey, listen, this is what I need from this marriage, and this is what I need from our relationship. I need a friendship, I need a companion, I need, you know, I need stimulation, and come up with some ideas, the same creativity you use in the workplace to bring it home and go, okay, here are some ideas. I've researched it and these are some things we can do. You know, we could go to a dance class together. We can, you know, go join a garden club together. Some things, you're not going to do 100% of stuff together, but a few things you need that. Otherwise, again, you may go off during the day and do your own thing and then come back to a stranger, you know, every night and turn your back and go to sleep. or go to another bedroom, which again opens up the marriage to other intrusions.
Allison,
Yes.
so we are looking at the couples. What about the singles like myself, who would have gone through all the different, well, the relationship with marriage, the separation, etc. But at this stage, being on the third stage, and you know, you hear about loneliness, looking for a companion to be there with you as you grow old. But it seemed to be a very difficult task to find someone on the in the third act who you can build that relationship with. Do you find, let me answer this way. Why is that so difficult? Or is it just difficult for somebody like me?
No, it's difficult all around. If you read about online dating websites all over the world, you would see the largest growing sector of that are for people over 50, because many people are single around at that time, either by choice, they have been single all their life, and now realizing, wait a minute, it's my last chance to enter an intimate relationship, and also realize as we're getting older, there's no one else to share life with or share the spoils of your career with. The need to have that companionship and attention and somebody to bring you a cup of tea, if you have the cold, that sort of thing. So the largest growing sector of people seeking companionship would be that sector. And there are many, many websites devoted to helping people over 50 find a companion. Of course, it depends on what part of the world you're living in, where the pool to choose from would be much smaller. If it was small when you were younger, it's even smaller as you get older for several reasons. If you are an energetic, 55-year-old female or 60-year-old, it's very difficult to find an energetic 60-year-old man. And if he is an energetic 60-year-old man, he's looking for a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old. So that's those are the difficulties. The single men who might be available might be those who way beyond what you want to deal with, you or other people like yourself. So that's why it is difficult. There is a lot of risk. There's a reward if you find it, but there's a lot of risk, including for all the people who go online. Because even while the largest growing sector of online dating sites are devoted to people over 50-something, the largest percentage of criminal activity takes place there as well. I mean, there are no end to the stories of career-minded women who were single all their life, and all of a sudden their emotions are alive and needing a companion. And there are groups of men who have put just as much energy into tracking women like that, and taking away everything they worked for and moving on to the next one. So it's a toss-up. It's like a grab bag, and it's unfortunately it's very difficult. And women who their emotions are all stimulated and so on, but women are left to, well, not left to, but to meet their needs, not necessarily sexual needs, but all their other emotional needs through friendships with other women and traveling together, and sharing stuff, because it's a very elusive goal for a woman over 50 to find. She has, again, a stroke of luck has to happen there. It does happen, but it's like lightning striking.
I don't want to leave out the men also, who I know we have a lot of male followers, who sometimes say, do you think it's easy for us? It's not easy for us neither. Is that a fact?
Yeah, it is a fact. It's not easy for men because, first of all, they are always expected to make the first move.
Yes.
So there's pressure there. But additionally, men as a group, and of course we always have differences within the group, but men as a group tend to have a certain view of themselves and their expectations that make them look in the wrong places or make them dismiss possibilities. You know, so he may be a 70-year-old, nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm over 70, but his eyes, you know, would be leading him toward his whole vision, you know, of what a woman should look like and so on, which is fed by ads and TV and so on. He will be leaning towards a 45-year-old and not, you know, someone who would make him a great companion and she's 55. So men are their own worst enemies when it comes to finding relationship. Yes, they do have the challenge of being the one to step out there. But again, they're their own worst enemies in terms of what they're looking at and what they're looking for and what their inflated expectations may be. You know, men may not be taking care of their health and you know, and may look any which way, but yet still, when they're looking for a woman, they have a whole different idea of what she must look like, you know, in order to be with him. And, you know, sometimes all of that is outside of reality.
Yeah. You know,
that also opened them up to being swindled in many ways.
Of course, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did talk, you know, a few minutes ago about young men tracking women on those websites. But young women do track older men on said websites as well. So I'm glad you brought that up, and they fall into the same trap. And sometimes a woman may not be too ashamed to tell her friends what happened to her, you know, in terms of getting swindled and all of that. Men do not talk about those things, so they hurt, and you never know where they lost all their money, and they may ditch their wife because they have all these promises of this young woman who said she would love him forever after, and you know, so he ditches his wife or his companion because he thinks, you know, the grass is greener on the other side, and he has this nice young thing, and then she goes off with everything he owns. You know, but he wouldn't talk about it because he's too ashamed to do that, to admit that he was swindled, you know, he was taken for a ride, you know, but that does happen, you're right.
But is there again, and I have this image of our cohorts having an undercurrent. I mean, yes, it's calm on the surface, but there's a lot of turbulence underneath. And I'm thinking now of is life changing? We are so aware of a lot of this. Are our 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds finding each other anyway? Are we thinking differently about our lives going forward? Yes, there is the young man looking to take advantage of the cougar relationships, and there are the older men looking for their trophy wives or their trophy companions. All that. But I am seeing our cohorts as reasonable people because of what they've come through. And okay, you've gotten to the stage, whether you were single, whether through that divorce, early divorce, you are arriving on this third act stage, being single for 15 years. Or you are married and you turn around and say, who is that man? Or who on earth is that woman? Have I been in the house with you for all this time? And you yourself, you're fighting to adjust to where you are. Are we through all that trauma and transition, thinking that, listen, the person that best suited to me might be someone closer to me? How are we thinking? How are men and women rationally, if it's possible, thinking about preparing for that life, the social, intimate part of life?
We could prepare mentally in terms of understanding ourselves and our needs, and be open to companionship and relationship. The flip side of that, however, is reality. Let's take the Caribbean. You know, it's a vast place, but broken up into very, very small islands. So the number of people who are available and free, you know, and
not recycled bottles.
Yeah, would be very small. So we are exposed globally through the internet. So women all over the world are discussing such. But there are 300 and something million people living in the US, you know. So opportunities, and people go from state to state, you know, and so on. They get on the internet and they get in their car or plane and go meet somebody right over the place, you know. But depending on where you live, those kinds of opportunities are not always available. So internally, we are prepared and we are open, but it may not happen simply because that the pool of people that you can get into relationship with within your age group, or your level of functioning and so on. And we're talking career women and career men. Until people also, again, because of society and how we were brought up and what we expect out of life, you know, a professional woman is hardly likely to want to link up with a plumber. Not because anything is wrong with that, but simply because in her head, she's going, no, can't do that. You know, what would my friends think about, you know, of me? She may occasionally have a hidden relationship, you know, with the electrician and the plumber and so on, but somehow she is, you know, her head cannot wrap around having a permanent relationship, or an open relationship where everyone knows about it. And we need to adjust our thinking, perhaps, in terms of companionship and who we get along with, and who are, you know, and not only the status, the social and financial status, but say that, and then you have to say as well, yeah, but we need to live and we need to pay bills and we need to a certain standard of living. Now, standard of living is not necessarily that you're trying to be high society or anything, but nothing's wrong with that either. But certain things you have become accustomed to, you know, where you eat, what kind of dishes you eat out of, you know, what kind of your lifestyle. Yeah. So at this age, lifestyles also have to match up, and there's nothing to criticize about that approach to life. If your lifestyles don't mesh, you know, what are you enjoying together? Yeah. And so it's not just to criticize, well, you know, the doctor doesn't want to be with the plumber. It's simply that if lifestyles can mesh, and you never know. Yeah. Sometimes people get surprised by how lifestyles could mesh with the most unlikely person on the surface. So we do have to be open, but on the other hand, we also have to acknowledge that opportunities are not always there. Yes, we could go and try to create them. But let's take where I live, for example, where it's a 55 plus community in Florida. And a lot of people live here, and a lot of single people live here as well, who, like myself, wanted to live, you know, a certain kind of way. And the first thing I looked up, you know, lots of clubs exist in our community as well, and there's a singles club. But you go to the singles club, I'm not kidding you, I'm talking real numbers here. There are 200 plus women.
Wow.
And 6 guys. You know, so, but even, I mean, the singles club is not a dating club, I admit, but at the same time, I'm just showing you, okay, if you go to a singles club, the likelihood of meeting someone there. It's a standing joke around where we live that a man does not remain a widow for very long.
No,
His wife dies this week, by the next month, he can find someone in quick time, simply because he has so many to choose from. In quick time. And also people realize, oh, they're getting older, they're over 70, there's nothing to wait around for. You bury your wife and you have a new woman, you know, the next week. And no, you know, that's fine. Well, in real numbers, that's what happens.
But Allison, why don't women give themselves that permission? All right, I bury my husband. What's so scandalous if in 6 months' time I return?
They have no choice, Terry-Ann.
Women don't give themselves permission for a lot of things because women tend to plan their lives too much around judgment. who is judging us.
Mhm.
I guess because women judge each other too much of what you're wearing, what you're not wearing, who you're with, who you're not with, what your children are, what your children are not. Men don't worry too much about those things. And we need to step out of that, stop judging each other harshly, and let judgment run off like water off a duck's back, and stop making your decisions based on that. Because women are judged if they go out with a younger guy. Women are judged if they're going out with a man who is not at their status level. And women are judged if the man is looking this way or that way or the next way, the man they're with. And women are judged too by other women.
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down to.
Yes.
So as women, we need to stop judging ourselves harshly, stop judging other women and what they do, and just say when a woman does something, say, hey, good for you, in terms of whether she decides to change the way she's dressing, whether she's going out with a guy 20 years younger than her, whether she's going out with a guy who weighs 300 pounds, or whether she's going out with a guy who's shorter than her by a foot, whatever it is, women judge each other too much when it comes to that. Yeah.
Anybody
Yes.
can bring up a controversial issue. And in today's world, it's there, same-sex relationships. Because sometimes you come out of the environment, you look at the husband, you look at another man, or you look at the wife and you look at another man, and they just decide this is not for me. And the world seems to be more liberal where that's concerned.
The world has become more liberal. Again, same-sex relationships exist on a spectrum. There are people who, from young, they knew that their interest in a sexual partner, emphasis on sexual partner, was the same sex. And those are the ones interested in getting married and raising children and having sex, right? There are other kinds of relationships that may look on the outside like same sex simply because it's two women, together.
Yeah.
They're not interested in having sex with each other, but they enjoy 95% of things that they do in common. And they can have a wonderful life together and meet certain emotional needs without it being a sex relationship. Especially when, they're over 50, they don't care, they're not interested in having sex or in having that kind of sexual intimacy in terms of body parts.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of sharing and enjoying a friendship, a very, very strong friendship, and enjoying being in the same space, and enjoying being in the same kitchen, and enjoying helping each other out, those are legitimate relationships. But women, again, are afraid of being judged. And somebody may think I'm having sex with her, so therefore I have to limit the time I spend with her. And again, so we back with the judgment aspect of things, whereas women could share a house and so on and move off into the sunset together without it being a sexually intimate encounter, but it's enjoyable, as I said, 90% of your life.
I totally agree with that, because I have a lot of girlfriends. I go out and we have really good time together. So I love that relationship with the girlfriends I have. However, you see that judgment. There's still other women who look and I mean, we're in Trinidad, you're talking about the West Indies. And if you're out too often with a girlfriend, you are judged immediately. It said maybe either you can't find a man because they feel you should have a man at your side,
yes.
or you turn into a woman now because you can't find a man. And I think though that judgment really affects people building genuine relationship.
And caring relationship as well, where you really care about each other and people's well-being and so on. Because part of growing old by yourself is that there aren't people who really care whether you're sick or you're well or what you're going through, whether you ate that day or did not. And women will do that for each other if they would give themselves permission.
Permission. I'm agreeing with Terry. And that's permission, because we do not judge men like that.
Nope.
men could get away. They can hang every day in the bar, in the clubs anyway. They pass and they pick up their men friends and they go out. And very rare they will be judged in that way.
No,
You know?
they're not. And they're not. They don't judge each other that way. And even if they may suspect that someone may actually, be gay, they don't say anything about it.
Yeah.
Whereas women tend to be a little bit. We tend to be a little bit too harsh in our judgment of one another, and that holds us back ourselves. So we could start with ourselves by not judging. It's also and also start by talking freely, like we're doing now, about it, and learning how to let those judgments fall away and not hold us back from making certain kinds of decisions or taking pleasure in the companionship of other women that have nothing to do with, as I said, what we call body part sexual exchanges. It's just simply that our emotional selves are made up to embrace all of that love and attention and caring which we can get from one another. Yes, you may find women here and there who discovered when they're over 50, whether they were single or married before, that they really want an intimate sexual relationship with another woman, and that's and realizing that's how they were always, but they were hiding it. That's a different element, and they're free to go and explore that. Well, free should make themselves free to explore that if they so desire. But there are other relationships types on the spectrum that can be explored, so that this whole element of loneliness and aloneness does not consume people who are not married or living with someone in an intimate relationship.
Because society put that pressure on you, that they feel, especially on you woman, that you should have a male companion right through life, it seems. And that pressure prevents, the woman from going outside and really enjoying life, as you mentioned before, taking holidays with your girlfriends, deciding to, as you grow older and you're looking for a companion, that you can arrange for you all to share an apartment together,
Yeah, I think the younger women, and when I say younger women, I mean, the 30-year-olds and the 20-year-olds are freer in terms of how they think. So I think when they get to be 50 and whatever, they'll be cool doing that, because they're doing, they're doing it now, and they don't care about the label anyway, because as far as they're concerned, cool, They see nothing wrong with the label, so they don't even mind if somebody mistakenly labels them that way. Whereas people in our age group tend to mind if someone mistakenly labels us, I get labeled because my hair is cut short, and I mean, that has been forever. And the labeling was a stigma, and we need to throw that stigma off. It's difficult to do. The younger people don't care about the stigma. They don't even care if they get labeled that way.
Yeah.
They're cool with it.
I think one of the most liberating things that we can do in our cohort to improve our quality of life on the third stage. I mean, I am just constantly seeing this sea of our cohort with that turbulence underneath. And for men and for women, having themselves miserable. Yes, you may be economically stable. Yes, you may be healthy. But if you don't have a community, if you don't have friends, all right, if you don't have an intimate partner, you can have, as you say, it's a full life. You can have 90%, be free to have friends and take ownership of
it and enjoy it. And who wants to criticize it, that's their business. So we have to keep reminding women all the time, and I'm glad I have this forum to do that. Stop judging other women. If your friend is 55 and she decides to go out with a 35-year-old, say, hey girl, happy for you. And don't be whispering behind her back and wondering what she's doing with him or what he wants with her. Just hope that she knows what she's doing and she's managing her life, and wish her well. Or be there if things go wrong, just a shoulder to cry on without the criticism and the judgment. And that goes for any man that she may choose to be with. If she finds I always joke with a friend of mine that if I was rich enough, I'll have a boy toy.
Yeah.
You know, because they're so judgmental. What she's doing the young one, I say, all he wants is some money. I say, if I had enough money, I'll be fine with that. I'll give it some, willingly share it. But there are all kinds of relationship routes that we can take. And you mentioned just now our quality of life and enjoying life is important, and that people may have the finances and they may have health. Let me say one quick thing about health.
Yeah.
The appearance of health could be deceptive. In the sense that if our emotions are in turmoil and we're not happy inside, that eats away. And this is why when you hear someone suddenly have something, but the person was looking so well, and and that's because that big contributor to overall health, which is your emotional and social health, which really contributes to total well-being. This sham of physical well-being could be our downfall if we're not looking after the other things, because those quiet, silent killers that call disease, to do with your heart and your liver and your insides and so on. Which
Structure, cancer.
Yeah. So people could suddenly drop down from all kinds of things. And everybody wonders why, and you say, it looked fine. So looking fine is great. We want to look in the mirror and go, yeah, I look great. You want to feel great as well. And feeling great is that total well-being, which includes that emotional health and your social connections, where when you wake up in the morning, you could smile and face the day. And when you go to bed at night, you could smile and say, if I die now, I'm not dying unhappy. I'm good, as against wishing to disappear because your life is quietly miserable.
Living away.
Yes.
Allison, I'm glad you brought up that at this stage when I know Terry and I know we probably winding down and looking at the time. But Allison, as you mentioned that, which is what the Connections 50 Plus is all about. That well-being and that forming community. And actually, we have a program, let me tell our followers, our listeners right now, we have a program that we're going to be launching, I think about next week, Terry, I know within the next 2 weeks. And it is to help, with that self-care. So at this stage, for people to be aware about where they're at in terms of their well-being, take check of themselves and really go out there to enjoy a healthy, and not just, we say healthy and happy, life. Because it's very important. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's so important for us to look at our situation, where we are and our well-being, to go out there and enjoy, doing what we like to do.
Right, and to remember that no one size fits all.
Exactly.
So, if a woman is getting total satisfaction and enjoying being with her grandchildren and, visiting one adult child from the other and spending her year doing that, and she's totally happy doing that, that's fine too.
Yes.
The woman wants to be alone and, and have a visiting boyfriend, and that makes her happy, that's fine too. If you are 60 and you want a 30-year-old boyfriend that is working for you, that's fine too. If you are 60 and you're okay with an 80-year-old, there's no one size fits all. People just have to understand what makes them emotionally comfortable, and understand they got to feed their spirit and their soul as much as feeding their body, and that you can find your own way to do it, and people who are compatible with your way of doing it. If your adult daughter is resentful every time you come to spend time with her and you're in a fuss every day, that's not making you happy. You're just running away from your house. But if you are going towards the happiness, then that's good for you. And we got to feed our soul and spirit every day as much as, as we feed our bodies.
And again, I want to remind, goes both for men and women.
For men and women, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this brings me to the point, and I mean, it might sound as though we won't have the close off on the tamper, but part of recognizing that, listen, what's going on here is not working for my soul.
Yeah.
I am miserable, and
Yep.
I'm not going to spend my entire third act unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
One important decision that many of us men and women have to make is to transition out of something that's known or familiar or is a habit, to allow themselves freedom to live. Now, some people feel that transition, the only way is divorce or an agreement that I would live my life. There must be other ways to transition, because not everyone can go through divorce. But even if you have to divorce, there are ways to do it in a healthy way. But there are ways that you can also decide, this is the life that I'm going to live. I don't have to be captured. Is that something that people, men and women, are paying attention to? Proactively deciding to transition into another type of personal or intimate life?
There are people who are paying attention to that, and if two people in the marriage and both are paying attention to it, that's progress, because then they could communicate about it.
Mm-hmm.
What happens though is when both people are not on the same page, where one person is working on themselves developmentally and awareness and all of that, and the other person is stuck in the previous stage, or the other person is stuck in gender roles, or the other person is stuck in the power and control role, or the other person is stuck in homemaking and the other one wants a different kind of life. Those are when the issues and the resentments and the conflicts arise, whether they are open conflict or silent conflict, or sometimes it's even silent warfare within the house. And the tension you can cut with a knife, and both people are unhappy. So if both people are willing to look within and to talk to each other about it, they may agree to stay together and renegotiate the marriage. When I say renegotiate the marriage, I mean talk about how are we moving forward together, the marriage or the living together relationship, or how could we creatively find ways to be emotionally satisfied and still share the same space. Yeah. There are creative ways to do that. Jennifer had mentioned earlier, well, splitting the house if that's the only asset you have. And people have to be realistic as well. If you have an asset, we all have to have a roof over our heads. So we're not asking people to walk away and end up in the street. Although there are some people think that's so bad, they will say, I'd rather do that. If things are that bad, then really some kind of decision has to be made. But people can get on the same page in terms of the program, in terms of discussion, in terms of communication, in terms of a resolution. It's not going to be 100%, meshing of a life if your life wasn't meshed before. But it's a term of, talking about things. Well, I like this, but I don't like that. So, okay, you can go do that while I go do that. And we will meet somewhere in the middle. We meet for lunch when you come back from, from hanging out or from your exercise class or from your whatever, because, people are different, and, but they can still work it out. When people can't get on that page where they could even communicate about it, or where one person is reneging on the relationship by saying, I don't want to talk about it, or when people are deceptive, meaning that they out doing their own thing and coming back and pretending something else is going on. Yeah. And people find different ways to meet their needs, and people also deny their own needs. But again, no one size fits all, and people have to learn themselves, get acquainted with themselves by workshops, reading, journaling, reflecting, meditating, whatever way it is to find out what you are about as a human being and what your emotional system is about as a human being. Do you like to be alone, or do you like lots of friends, or do you just like to be with two people? Get to know yourself, and then you and your partner could trade notes to see where you have some things in common and how you could do that together and how you could meet your other needs in a different way. Or people may realize, oh my God, or they may know that even before they do that work, I can't be with that, I can't stay in this environment anymore. But people need to talk it out with each other or with a friend or with a professional to help them arrive at a point of happy transitions.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that question because, I think of people, with Connections 50 Plus, we have workshops, and Jen and I go through, we use assessments to help people get a starting point. And every time it happens, it never ceases to amaze me how much people don't know of themselves.
About themselves.
When
Yes.
do something or whether it's an assessment or they begin to talk to people, what comes out of their brains and their mouth and their souls shocks them. Sometimes they jump when they hear what they say.
Hear it.
Mhm.
People don't know, and I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, so correct me if I stumble over it. People don't know how to go about getting to know who they are to be able to make the next step.
If they want to, they would find out how to do it, but a lot of people prefer not to find out.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they have to be brought to that point because they are afraid of this person hiding inside themselves. Every now and then they get a glimpse and they push it back down because they don't really, they know change is going to have to happen after they get to know the self, and they are afraid of that step. Because if someone really wants to know themselves, my God, these days you have all kinds of ways to getting there very quickly in terms of books and the internet and people and workshops. If they really want to this, they would search it out. There are people who search out getting help, but there are lots of people who are afraid of this self inside them.
I would like to say in our last 3 minutes, maybe we have to do part 2 of this.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 things that people are afraid of? What causes them to squelch? I don't want to see that. What are the top 3 things?
Well, one is they're afraid of change, and they know once they give credence to this self that's hiding in front of them, that something will have to change. They're afraid of pain because there's a lot of pain involved in the history of the self and understanding how you got to be how you are. And they're afraid of those feelings, that pain. And they also, back to the normal things you're afraid of, they're afraid of the unknown. What then?
Not this.
Yeah. If not this, what? This I know it may be bad, it may be horrible, I may be resentful, but at least I know this. I don't know that new thing that may happen. And what if I find out that I hate being married? What if I find out I don't like this job? What if I find out I am gay? What if I find out that I like younger men? What if I find out that I enjoy sex? What if?
Yeah.
And they hold themselves back. So, but believe me, if someone wants to find out more about themselves, there are so many opportunities out there for them to find out where to go and what to read and what to do. And it's even more available now than when I was young in terms of younger. The internet is, there's nonsense on the internet. There's a lot of good stuff as well. Yes. Pull up a self-knowledge assessment tool. There are tons of them everywhere. People just don't want to.
They're afraid.
And the first challenge to them is you have to want to. And what is preventing you from wanting to is the first question. Let's look at that. What's preventing you from not having done this work before?
Okay.
What has prevented you from not having done this work?
Well, I think, Allison, you just set up the topic for our second conversation.
And
Because we are flat out of time.
I'm not surprised because we're talking about life and there is a ton of, we could talk from now for the next 20 years about all of this stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, but
And Terry, and you know, this has been a difficult conversation for many people, you know, and I am sure those who have been in with us right now, probably very excited to actually see, yes, they're waiting on this the follow-up.
yeah. Well, what I hope is that in the range, and I am conscious, Allison, of people being afraid. We've touched on so many things. And the fact is, I hope we've touched on something that you out there may be struggling with, identifying and confronting. And, you know, part of our programs, whether it is self-care, and part of the reason we're trying to build this community is so that we're adults. We are the grown-ups in the room. Everyone else is a child, either the young child or the ones who making the second trip as a child. We are the adults. We have the right to express. Now we may come to a different decision on what we may do, but we have a right to express and to know what we want to do. And this has been phenomenal. We really have to continue the conversation. And I really want to say thank you so much, Allison. This is the issue of relationships, and this identifying that new person, that the person who is leaving the second act stage and emerging. I mean, he or she has never existed before. At no time.
True.
Right.
He's never existed before. So it's a clean page, write your rules. That's how I see it. So,
Definitely.
we've got to say bye-bye.
Okay, bye. And,
Bye for now. Thanks again for being with us. Yes.
So,
bye.
to our viewers across the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago, across the world, thank you, Allison. Thank you, all of you. We will continue discussion. And remember, be yourself. Decide what makes you happy.
And give yourself permission.
Give yourself permission.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.